There's a new moon. New moons happen every month. But there's a new moon that's happening on Monday. I'm going to call up the chart right away because it's just something to behold. You might notice there's a bunch of the more significant celestial objects kind of all together gathered here in Pisces and Aries. This is Monday around the time of the eclipse because we are having a total solar eclipse visible in parts of the United States this particular time. Here at 19 degrees of Aries. What makes an eclipse? Pardon me. What makes an eclipse? It's an alignment of the sun and moon being within 17 degrees of the axis created by the nodes of the moon. South node here, smiley face, and north node here, headphones. The energy represented by the nodes of the moon can be said to be a destiny line. Now, let's unpack that just a little bit. South node is a representation along the destiny line of where we have come from, an energy signature that engulfs, if you will, processes that we have been through in the investigation of being alive. That, for all intents and purposes, since we've been through them, there's not a lot of extra energy required to actually facilitate what is represented by that south node signature. North node. North node it kind of sits there like a tone that is sounding, saying, if you pay attention to opportunity when it presents itself and follow that tone, it is likely that you will discover aspects of the life adventure that have been beckoning your participation in becoming something new. That's the destiny line of that nodal signature. And you can kind of see that this sun and moon eclipse that's going to happen, because they only happen when they're within 17 degrees of that nodal axis, are going to be right there within 4 degrees of the node, the north node. So, might it be that there's an opportunity knocking for this particular new moon? Yes, that's right. It's still basically a new moon. The main difference between every other new moon beginning that lunar cycle is that this one is tickling that destiny line from the north node side of the equation. So there's something, there's a potential, if you will, to, sense that we are being gifted an opportunity to pay attention to something that is trying to awaken an aspect of ourselves. I think of, this is happening in Aries, that impulsive warrior type energy that is attempting to invite something new into the equation. This is essential Aries. And just looking at it from the, potential warrior type energy, if one were to pay attention to the, what shall we call them, imbalanced energies that exist on the planet right now, you say there's too much tension. There's too many vying oppositions trying to attain the upper hand in whatever the situation is. The irony that is in play, and you may or may not believe this, but it is only about 2% of the population of planet Earth, I'm talking about the human population, that is stirring the pot, riling things up, creating animosities and tensions. Only 2%, 98% of the human population on the planet wants to live well, wants to, I don't mean be millionaires or stuff. I mean have food, shelter, security. 98%, but the 2% that is, theoretically running the show right now is trying to utilize the information highway, if you will, to keep us on edge. Because if we're on edge, we're much easier to control than if we're, pleasantly living a life where, art and music play much more of a substantial part in the process of how we engage with our daily lives. This axis across Aries and Libra. Libra, by the way, is the artist. That expression of something that comes through from a zone that, doesn't necessarily need the encumberment of tension and restriction and angst. Libra is about how we get along with one another. Aries is individuality, an expression of self. There's so many factors that come into play as I look at what it is that is transpiring currently. And there have been times on the planet where, our ancestors, if you will, did not have a good or a clear understanding of this ecliptial process. That's not the case anymore. We understand the mechanics of what it is that is transpiring. Though sometimes I just have this suspicion that the 2% is, stirring up visions from those ancestral realms to say, you need to be on your toes, careful, If you don't do things right, things could go horribly wrong. Me wonders if perhaps that is just spun a wee bit too strongly as we go through this celestial dance process. It's a new moon. And with any new moon, we're being asked to consider, what is it that we are about to set as our intention for the next lunar cycle? Eclipses, on the other hand, also tickling this lunar new moon adventure, have a tendency to linger longer. And one of the things about a eclipse is there's a spark of potential change that is being stimulated, that is going to be with us for an extended period of time. And based on how we embrace, if you will, our willingness to change has everything to do with the particular energy that we are being asked to awaken to for an extended period of time. You have to ask yourself, do I need to pay attention specifically to what it is the 2% is attempting to rile up between myself and you, between one being and any other? Matters of trust. People say, well, can I trust you? There's the crux. Because trust, if you see it from another perspective, is, do I trust myself? Because if that's the case, then I live as trustworthy, and all my engagements are along that trust line. And that's the key to trust. Not necessarily the trust that somebody else is not spinning a tale to try and, throw me off kilter. Because the trust, the deep, soul-felt trust that I am living with can't be tipped, if you will, across some sort of an imaginary line into mistrust. Because I'm not trusting you. I am trusting the source energy of life itself that is actually running, percolating, if you will, in every one of us. But actually requires that we discover that part within our souls that knows this with everything that we are. There are reasons for why we incarnated into this materialist plane of the earth dance. And that is to do the hoops and the hurdles of this materialistic side of experience and discover what is it that as a soul I came to live with everything that I have and share with any who are willing in the experience of expanding that soul awareness amongst ourselves. Remember, 98% of us are not interested in a warfaring type life. That's only the 2% that are manipulating us into, the process of killing one another. For what? To better our position on the planet? I don't think so. There is no betterment that war creates. Only angst, desire, heart strains, uncomfortableness. Another factor that comes into play is the fact that Chiron, that theoretically, the term that gets used all the time is the wounded healer. And I suggest that if you don't know Chiron's story, it would be beneficial to look it up. But Chiron, a centaur, had an affliction. How it happened is not so important, but he was a demigod. And as such, he couldn't die. But this affliction that he had was extremely painful. And, you don't hear in any of the story versions that I've come across for Chiron about his complaining to all those who happened to fall within earshot of the issues that were, having to be dealt with through his painful side. He went and applied investigation into trying to alleviate the suffering that he was going through. And in that process, discovered many of the healing processes that we take for granted these days as he taught others these health methods that he discovered to share far and wide in a process of allowing for us to discover aspects of the healing modality. He was a healer. And what he discovered along those healing lines has been the basis of, the potential healing schools and sciences that have developed down through the ages. Unfortunately, The 2% has, what shall we call it, hijacked this process, saying that you need to pay attention to the AMA because we are doing our best, to alleviate your suffering. Well, there are processes that the medical facilities represent, which, are absolutely perfect for being alive on the planet these days. I think of the story of, no, forget the story. However, economics has, wormed its way into almost every aspect of living on this planet. And the AMA is and pharmaceutical industry not immune to this. And unfortunately, our modern medical system is not a health-oriented system. It's a theoretical prevention from dying system surrounding the process of how can we maximize our profits in this health regime, which is not to necessarily just extend the life and make the living experience easier for those having health issues, but to allow for recompense to the system until no longer are you able to survive and we have to let you go. You are no longer an economic stream to us. Kind of coarse, I would say, that we don't really have a health system, particularly here in the United States. We have a death avoidance system so that those in the positions of control can squeeze every bit of recompense out of us until that moment when they just have to let us go and go on to the next being who has come to share their wealth, so to speak, into that system. Sorry about having to get off in that, but Chiron, right here on this eclipse, is saying, wake up. It's not a game, We came to live life. And health, though it may not always be what we'd hoped it would be, there are so many factors that go into how it is that our health is challenged in the modern world. We're no longer attuned to our food stream. It has been removed from us to know even where our food is coming from and what has been done to it in order for it to reach us. And in that transition, we are being inundated with so many chemicals, so many manipulations of the food stream that we don't have control over. And Chiron would say, eat healthy. Modern spiritual practitioners all indicate that very same thing. Choose wisely not only what you eat, but what you're attitude when you actually consume things. This has far, far more weight than you give it credit for. And this new moon, this North Node destiny line that's being stimulated here at this eclipse is asking us, pay attention to how you tune into the living energy of life. And I don't just mean each other here as human beings on this planet, I mean all of life. Do you walk in nature enough? Do you recognize when you are walking in nature that this is as well a part of you as much, or perhaps even more so, than what transpires when you interact with another human being? The energies of what's transpiring this week start right out on that Monday with the eclipse, saying, something is afoot. And I won't say that there's always easy answers. You know, living in the physical plane of Earth never has been, nor never should have been, portrayed as easy. It's a learning school. This is why souls come here, to actually and potentially expand their soul awareness. You know, the spirit beings, the souls of unborn beings, wait in line, clamor, if you will, for the opportunity of being able to come here into the earth sphere where the experience of sensation can happen, where you have taste and smell and sight and touch. You know, it's a very tactile environment. Is not the case for souls in the realm of in between incarnation life. That is a magical place, don't get me wrong. But what is allowed to transpire in the investigation of a soul's growth process here on earth is something very, very magical if you're paying attention and not stuck under the thumb, if you were, of the 2%, which are saying, you know, this is not a safe place to be. You know, you need to fight for your existence. This is not what 98% of us want. We don't want to fight for life. We want to live life. We want to hear the music play. We want to, you know, pay attention to bird song. We want to hear the tune of life as it comes through. There's magic in those notes. There's like a beckoning if you're paying attention to say, where's that coming from? Yeah, coming from the flute, but step outside. Spring is here. The birds are singing to one another. They're making nests. There's a lot of creativity afoot. Are you paying attention to it? Are you participating in it? This week, a couple other things take place. Mercury's retrograde, yes. So there are factors in play that, might be a challenge to the effectiveness of how we communicate. Hopefully, what I'm sharing with you in this celestial chatter dance is not too far afield for you. The moon, which basically begins this week with the eclipse in Aries, makes it all the way into Cancer, the sign that it has a very strong affinity for as the week proceeds. But here's the other main aspect. Mars, the ruler of Aries, is moving along through Pisces, where, the potential for the poet and the mystic to put in an appearance through that Aries dance that we're doing right now, in conjunction with Aries, the impulse and drive to, allow something to be born that's new, may not be working at a surfacey kind of level that you can easily put your finger on. And the reason why is because Pisces is not meant to function all the time at that level. And the irony of Pisces is that there is the realm where trust exists, spirit percolating around in the oceanic depths of awareness is the realm of Pisces. Mars in Pisces right now is stirring that particular cauldron, perhaps vigorously. As we get to Wednesday this week, a Mercury day, by the way, Mercury's still retrograde, still in Aries, and it's being fed by this Martian energy up here in Pisces, going into a dance with Saturn. The question might arise, is there a lesson plan? Saturn, after all, represents life lessons that I need to pay attention to as I do this ecliptical dance right now, and try to pay attention to the longer range significance of what it is that I am attempting to birth in this human dance. And with any luck, it is connected to all of life. And here in the deep realms of Pisces, Mars and Saturn holding hands, saying, is your attention to the life lesson that this particular eclipse is asking us to pay attention to closer to the surface of what you sense is potential? That's an essay question. I cannot answer this for you, but would share with you in any moment that you and I have a conversation, the opportunity to go deeper. Don't get stuck in the 2%. 98% of us want a much different and better life, style, process, and experience than what it is the 2% say is potential for us. I'm thinking, oh yeah, we have one other aspect that happens this week. You can kind of see Mercury and the Sun are kind of approaching each other, Mercury going in retrograde. And there we go. Thursday, a Jupiter day. The Sun catches up with Mercury, racing back toward it. This is a time known as Cassini. It's when a planet is invited into the heart of the Sun, the King, the regal essence of life experience. That is what the Sun represents. And when a planet is in the heart of the Sun, it is being gifted the opportunity to do the things, set in motion those things that are regal in nature. So yes, Mercury is retrograde right now, but it's still an opportunity if you recognize it and utilize it to, facilitate, is it clear thinking? No, Mercury's in retrograde, not necessarily, but is it deep thinking? Absolutely. Mercury in retrograde, each time this happens, this is a opportunity for initiation to transpire. And falling right on the heels of this eclipse, this Mercury-Sun conjunction is attempting to initiate us and recognize that there is a different direction going forward, that if we're paying attention, we can share as perspective with one another to recognize that the 2% isn't spelling out something that is to our benefit. To their benefit, perhaps, but only in the short term. The long-term benefit, 98% of us need something very different to facilitate an effective soul growth and physical growth that we share with one another on this planet. Those are the main energies that this week brings, that I see, and making a big deal out of the eclipse. It's a new moon. It represents a level of change that is along that destiny line, so not a minor consideration, and yet not something to run around like Chicken Little with its head cut off saying, "The sky is falling, the sky is falling." Oh, no, no, not. Here we are, ready to birth something new. That's the opportunity of any eclipse. And that 20th degree, 19 degrees of Aries, it's going to stay sensitive for a long time. And all those planets that were sitting just above it, they're all going to come down and cross that 19 degrees of Aries. And every time they do, they will stimulate us into hopefully asking, did we make an appropriate adjustment to our trajectory forward? Is the life going forward going to be new and different? Are we going to be able to share with one another in a really magical fashion what it means to really be alive? Have a wonderful eclipse, everybody. I hope that the initiation is as delightful as it can be. Up to you, remember that. See you all next week.